nostalgia bias is ruining football. Now, this seems to be pretty much a common occurrence pretty much after every weekend of football. People start reminiscing about what footy was like 10, 20 years ago, and I think we just need to stop. Now, I don't personally necessarily agree with the statement that I made at the start of the video. However, it is, in my opinion, still ruining it that we keep talking about the olden days. Like, we just have to accept that the game has changed now, like it or not. I think in terms of what football used to be like, yes, we used to have more free flowing, probably had more, volleys from the halfway line, just fucking whacking a free kick from wherever the fuck it's from. We were just getting more just courageous plays, I guess, in a sense, not necessarily worrying about like what the manager's going to say to them if something goes wrong with the shot or the pass. Just fuck it, just take that risk, and that's what made the beautiful game that we all fell in love with. But I do think sometimes we can get a little bit caught up in our childhoods. We always are going to think, regardless if it's just football, if it's just life, we're always going to think our childhood was better than anyone else's. People my age are always going to say that our childhood was better because we had more technology than the previous generation. The previous generation is going to say, well, it was better without technology and social media because you just got to experience life. And then my generation may also say, well, we had fucking SpongeBob and shit, and kids nowadays are doom scrolling and shit, like fucking get a life. But I mean, it's just the time you grew up in. You're always going to view that as the best time of your life because that's when you had the most freedom, let's be honest. I think the one thing that kind of gets on my nerves when it comes to nostalgia merchants, and don't get me wrong, I guess I am a nostalgia merchant myself because I do prefer how football used to be. Like, for instance, take the long throw-ins have come back this season, and yes, I understand people have a go at Arsenal because they're supposed to be the best team in the league and it's not the most exciting way to play. But people were asking for long throws, they came back, and now people are moaning at them. Like, if you're going to ask for something, then you can't moan when it's you can't just say, oh, well, I wanted it for these specific teams. You asked for it, and it came back, so I don't get what people are moaning at. Corners, the same type of thing as well, they're coming back. No, less short corners nowadays. Obviously, some certain teams are still doing them, but it's got less and less this season. And I also think one thing that people always used to moan about was the big six and how much they were just above everyone else. Nowadays, it literally isn't that anymore. It's just so much more competitive, and yet people are still complaining. The game being more tactically, yes, it might make it slightly more boring. It might take certain types of players out of the games, like your typical streets. Won't forget spoilers who are just doing these fucking mad skills, but it gives smaller teams a chance because it's literally just this system versus that system. We see the likes of Brentford this season obviously benefiting from that, and Tottenham, like, come on, like, for being serious, everyone, like I said, used to complain about the big six. If it was still the same today, the free-flowing football, do you really think Tottenham, as shit as they are, would be where they are? Probably fucking not. It's because the system that they play is fucking shite. One of the big things that people constantly bring up is these Mavericks, these kind of players that are just free-willing, just kind of do their own shit, don't focus on, certain tactics or whatever. Everyone always refers to the PSG team, but I think the reason why everyone can go, well, look at all the Mavericks they have, like, it shows that it is still possible in the game. Like, the whole team's practically free-flowing. Like, you're obviously going to recognise it. I think people probably don't recognise as many Mavericks today because Mavericks aren't necessarily people that are going to score a shit ton of goals or get a shit ton of assists. They're just people that when you watch them, you go, fucking hell, he's fucking quality. You're not going to see that today because instantly everything everyone ever talks about today when you talk about a player, the first thing is stats. And these Mavericks don't get the stats. That's the whole point. It's about an eye test. So when you're going off stats, you're instantly eliminating the chance for you to notice any of these Mavericks in the game. And it does actually confuse me sometimes as to whether people actually want this back, because a couple of weeks ago in the Carabao Cup final, the very famous incident of Ryan Cherky doing 2 keepy-ups when no one was near him. Don't get me wrong, Arsenal fans, I can understand why they'd be angry because, the 2-0 down in the cup final, the team's playing shit. And, he's essentially taking the piss in a sense. But, I mean, why everyone else is getting mad at this, I have no fucking clue. Like, this is literally what everyone's been asking for. These players that do these things and take the piss out of other teams like that. That's what you keep complaining about. And then you see Alan Pardew sitting there going off on one when the fella literally started fucking doing a whole fucking karaoke dance after his team went 1-0 up. in an FA Cup final. Like, come on, mate. Like, come on. How can you have a go? Do you know what I mean? At least if he was like a little bit of a stubborn prick who didn't really celebrate, I could understand it. But you know what I mean? Like, come on. Like, you did it yourself. Now, like I said, I don't necessarily disagree that football was entertaining more back in the day, more than it is now. I just think we should stop talking about it so much. I think that's what's ruining the game. Take, for instance, the Sky Sports intro, like the kind of aesthetics, I guess, of watching a Premier League game. Now, one thing, I saw a TikTok on this the other day, everyone moans about the new kind of Sky Sports scoreboards. But, like, if you look back at some of them, like the last one was literally just like a few little black squares, and some of them were covered in the team's colour. It really wasn't that good, let's be honest. I do agree on some of the things, like the Sky Sports intro that they have now. I think the song isn't really that good, and even if the song was good, the intro in itself, in terms of the way it looks, is just shit anyway. It's just everything, badges are the same, just everything's made so simplistic nowadays. I don't really get what the hype is around all that. But this whole striker thing, and I'm not talking about the elite of the elite, like the Erling Haalands and the Harry Kanes and that. I'm talking about these kind of mid-table, or slightly outside the big six strikers that kind of were hard to play against for the defenders. Now, I'm not debating that, but every time that they talk about these players, it really irritates me. They talk like there's none of these players today. Like Mateta, is he not that? I know he's not particularly done well necessarily this season, but last season, Sean Larsson scored 14 goals for fucking Wolves. He's a tall, big, fuck-off striker. Like, are these not the type of players you're talking about? And these players are actually scoring more goals than the type of hard strikers that you were talking about. My last point on this is just the amount of football that we watch. Like, pretty much 95% of games now, European football, league football, is on TV, so we're literally seeing every game. And when you're seeing every game, it is more likely that you are going to catch a game which is shit, which is a 0-0, which is a very shit 1-1 or something like that, which are games that back in the day, yes, you might catch one every once so often, but the reason you're saying you didn't see them as much back in the day is because those games weren't on TV. They were all at 3 o'clock. The shit games, you wouldn't watch them. That's why you're seeing them more now, is because there's just more games. Like, people act like 0-0s and 1-1s never happened. They did. They really did. I mean, I remember seeing a TikTok the other day, or something on Instagram maybe, of a picture of Man United with Louis van Gaal getting 6 0-0 draws or something like that in a row. Like, if you're telling me it didn't happen, it really did. You just weren't seeing them as much, so that obviously affects the way you think about it. But yeah, that's just my opinion. Again, I'm not having a go at nostalgia merchants for thinking football was better. I don't necessarily disagree with that. But I do think we need to stop talking about it, because I think it's ruining the modern game. And yeah, I just think we need to get on with the way football is. Enjoy what we've got. What are your thoughts on this? Leave in the comments.